All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to unpack the global standard that basically acts as a lie detector for corporate climate claims. It's a really big deal, so let's break it down. So let's dive right in. You see headlines like this all the time, right? Some big company announces a really bold climate pledge. But honestly, in a world that's so wary of greenwashing, how can we be sure the numbers are real? How do we tell what's genuine progress and what's just slick marketing? Well, that's the big question we're tackling today.
And this really gets to the core of the problem. If we're going to trust these claims, we need a lot more than just a promise. We need a system, a real system, that's built on proof you can actually verify.
Yeah, because without a standardized, globally accepted way to, check the math, these pledges are just words in a press release. And this isn't just about feeling good. It has huge real-world consequences. Investors, they need to manage their risk. Regulators have to enforce policy. And frankly, all of us need to know who's actually walking the talk on climate action.
So, what's the fix? Well, thankfully, there is one. There's a global rulebook, and it's designed to bring clarity, consistency, and, most importantly, credibility to how we account for greenhouse gases.
Okay, so what's really interesting is how this whole system is set up. It's called the ISO 1460 series, and it's the international framework. So Part 1 gives organizations the rules for building their own GHG inventory. Part 2 gives rules for specific projects that reduce emissions. But what we're focused on today is Part 3, ISO 1464-3. This is the one that tells independent third parties exactly how to check the math. It's literally the rulebook for the referees. And this is where the standard gets super precise. It makes this really critical distinction between two very different things: checking what has already happened and taking a hard look at promises for the future.
First up, we have verification. The easiest way to think about this is looking backward. It's like a forensic process, really. A verifier takes a company's claim, say we cut our emissions by 20% last year, and they dig deep into all the historical data to confirm if it's factually correct and that they followed all the rules.
And then, on the other hand, there's validation. This is all about looking forward. It's not checking facts that have already happened, it's about assessing a forecast. So, for example, if a company says they have a new project that's going to capture a bunch of carbon, a validator scrutinizes the plan itself, the assumptions, the math, the methods, to figure out if that future outcome is actually reasonable.
Here's a great way to think about it. Verification is like a financial audit. An auditor comes in, checks the books from last year, and makes sure everything adds up. They're working with hard historical facts. Validation, that's more like a financial analyst who's looking at a company's future earnings forecast. They can't know the future, obviously, but they can rigorously test whether the assumptions behind that forecast are even plausible.
So how does a verifier actually do this stuff? It's definitely not just a quick thumbs up or thumbs down. ISO 140643 lays out a super rigorous evidence-based process they have to follow. Yeah, it's a full-on systematic investigation. It all starts with a strategic analysis to figure out where the errors are most likely to be hiding. Then comes the deep dive for evidence. We're talking everything from site visits to data sampling. After they've evaluated all that evidence, the team forms a conclusion. And here's the crucial part. An independent reviewer, someone totally separate, double-checks the entire process to make sure it's subjective. No rubber stamping allowed.
Now listen, not all verifications are created equal. The standard actually allows for different levels of rigor, which gives you a different level of assurance. Just think of it as the degree of confidence the verifier has in the final statement. The two main levels are reasonable and limited. Reasonable assurance is the really high bar. It requires way more extensive evidence gathering. Limited assurance is, well, it's less intensive. And it's a subtle but really important difference. Think of it this way. Reasonable assurance is like a doctor saying, "You are healthy." Limited assurance is more like the doctor saying, "Well, I see no signs of illness." The first one is a much stronger, more confident statement.
Okay, so after all that investigation, all that work, how does it all come together? The verifier has to deliver their formal, written opinion. It's the final verdict. And there are basically three ways it can go. The best case scenario is an unmodified opinion. That's a clean bill of health. Then you have a modified opinion, which means the statement is mostly okay, but the verifier found some specific issues they have to flag, kind of like a footnote. And then there's an adverse opinion. That's a failing grade. It means the verifier found significant material problems. And this takes us right back to our original question. An unmodified opinion from a credible, independent verifier who followed the ISO 140643 standard, that is the proof. That's the whole mechanism that turns a corporate claim into a trustworthy piece of information that we can all rely on. You don't even have to take my word for it. The standard itself says it best. The entire point of this detailed, methodical process is to enhance credibility, consistency, and transparency. It's all about creating a common language and a common set of rules so that we can have a meaningful conversation about climate action that's based on data we can all trust. So verification gives us this incredibly powerful tool to build trust in what a company has already done. But what about what they promise to do? I mean, that's where validation comes in, right? Assessing those plans for the future. And while it's essential, it relies on assumptions, not historical facts, which leaves us with a really critical question. How do we balance holding companies accountable for what they've done in the past with having real confidence in their promises for the future? Well, that's the next big challenge in this whole conversation.